City of Miami Mayor Ken Russell, thank you for joining us.
Good to see you, Michael. Thanks for having me again.
So first, you were a commissioner for how many years?
Going on 8 years. It was 2 terms.
That is an amazing thing. That here you are, so young. You look like you're about 39. Right?
52.
52. Wow! Congratulations.
Japanese genes. I give my mother full credit.
Right. And before we get on to the serious stuff, when you were younger, you had really long hair.
Yes.
And you were a yo-yo champ.
Yes.
Tell us about your experience and what yo-yoing did for you and your family.
Oh, well, this story will be the end of my political career now that people will know my yo-yo history. My father had an early patent on mass-producing yo-yos. They were originally from the Philippines, and he was one of the first yo-yo champions worldwide. And he met my mother, who was the yo-yo champion of Japan. She used to play yo-yo in kimono, and they traveled the world together. And then my brother and I took over the business. When my dad retired, I sold about 20 million yo-yos. I traveled to 55 countries. I learned multiple languages to teach kids how to play yo-yo, and that was it. It was a good time in life.
You still practice a little bit?
I do. It's like a stress toy. I walk around now and I play yo-yo as I...
Does your wife say put it away, get it away?
No, she's very supportive of my yo-yo.
So when you're rebuilding cars, do you have the yo-yo going at the same time?
Separate. Got to keep that separate.
So tell us about the most recent car that you're rebuilding.
So back when I was a kid, my dad had an old Jaguar, an old E-Type, and when he passed away, my mom sold it. So I'd always wanted to find one that I could restore. And so I found one rusted out, rust bucket, not running at all, and I'm nut and bolt restoration starting from scratch with it now. So it's a wreck right now.
I heard of you, must have been about 10 years ago. I was with my son-in-law in Coconut Grove. He says, that's the guy over there that's running for City of Miami Commission. That was you. Mm-hmm. And then I started following you. I think it was on Facebook or YouTube, where you're going around to the waterways, the parks, and you would be pointing out stuff.
Yeah.
And so you really had this social media thing down.
Well, funny, people thought I was teaching people about the environment. I was learning about the environment because I was literally working in the water sports industry, and I was upset about contaminated water. Then there was incinerator ash at the park in front of my home, and that shut down the park, and that's when I ran for office. So as I learned about the environment, I loved sharing that with people because I was learning things that I knew my neighbors didn't know either. And so by sharing that, it created more of a movement that would support those environmental solutions.
There have been lots of conversations about the tree ordinance recently. We've gotten many letters about that. The city, I'm not quite clear on it. So we have the tree thing. Then we had the city wanted to stop its recycling program recently. And of course, we have the case where 3 of the elected officials wanted to delay this election and advance it for another year, which meant they could stay in office for another year and get paid.
Correct.
To boot. Right?
Correct.
And it's not a small amount of money.
Commissioners get paid. Each commissioner gets about $104,000 a year. Mayors make over $125,000 plus perks.
I'm sorry, Damien. All right, but when I saw that they were proposing that was atrocious. Voting themselves a raise. All right.
So I like Damien very much, and because I'd like to stop you there because I don't fault him for trying to do a good thing. Moving elections to even years will be a good thing, and when it's done the right way, it'll stick. Which is through voter referendum. When your voters, the voters are the ones who can decide our salaries as elected officials, our terms, when elections are held, not we as electeds, or we would just vote to stay there all the time. And so I know he was trying to do something good, but I warned him, I said, this is going to fall on challenge.
Right, so 2 courts have ruled against the city.
Yes.
I think they're appealing it again, but it sounds like there's going to be an election in just a couple months.
Yes, the appeals court was clear, and it was unanimous. So, and after that, both Commissioner Pardo and Commissioner King backed off, issued statements saying they're not pushing forward on another appeal. And they shouldn't, because literally within 7 weeks, the first ballots are going to be cast. We don't have time for this. We need to have this election.
And the reason that you think that it should be changed, so the election day is what?
So if it lines up with our presidential and midterm elections, the turnout is much greater, and your electeds will reflect your electorate much more. Right now, it's really who the incumbents are and who they drag out to elections through very selective communications. And people say, oh, well, that's the electorate's fault. No, they just don't know there's an election in these off years. So we line it up with regular elections. It'll become more efficient, more turnout. I'm in favor.
In off years elections, not unusual. 15 to 22% seems to be like a common range of the total voters. And out of that, that means half of that gets somebody elected, which is an extraordinary small amount.
Correct.
And during when it's lined up with the midterms and the presidential election, it's easily sometimes 3, 4, 5 times as much, which is more representative of the people that are there. South Miami, had the charter change, they could do that, and immediately it was in the 40% range.
Yes.
That's the way it's supposed to be.
That's a good start. I have a laundry list of charter reforms I'd like to see once I become mayor that will help set the city on the right track to attract better candidates in the future. That's the real goal, that we have people in our community who aren't in politics who feel they can take some time out of their lives and contribute and make a good difference.
And it does take time to do that. When you're an elected official,
oh yes,
it's all the time.
It's all, yes. If you want to do a good job, it's all encompassing.
Yes. Yeah. And we see it, the old saying, I'm a pothole mayor, which means everybody in the world would call the mayor, hey, can you fix this hole over there?
Sure.
Right. And let's talk about the way the management system is done at the city of Miami. You have an elected mayor, and you have the commissioners, and you have a city manager. Explain the process.
Yes, this is what we call a hybrid weak mayor system. And cities with strong mayors are where the mayor is the administrator of the city. They direct the staff, and they carry out, the actual effectuation of what the commissioners want them to do. But in our case, there's a mistaken notion that the mayor is ceremonial and doesn't have a lot of responsibility. I'm going to change that, because the mayor has a tremendous amount of soft power and influence for good that they can do. One, our charter says that the mayor is the presiding officer of the commission, meaning they're supposed to be the chairman of the commission, sit there every meeting, hold the gavel for 8 hours, and conduct those meetings. We've never had a mayor do that ever. And that's the first step of leading our city, is leading that commission.
When we think who's on the city, you always say, call the mayor. I don't know who it is, but call the mayor, and thinking that that's the way that it should be done. But if somebody has a question to ask of the city, what's a good place for them to start?
Well, your mayor is always a good place, because they can be an advocate for you. They can always pick up the phone and call the manager and help advocate for things that need to be done. Your local commissioner is your primary advocate, because he has the smallest constituency to take care of with those sorts of services. But if you know the department that you need help from, that's the most direct way. The manager, the city manager, or the department you need help from can actually solve what you need.
So people understand you have the mayor, which is theoretically the citywide connection, but then there's how many districts in the city of Miami?
So this is another thing that needs to change. Miami's the largest city in the country with only 5 commissioners. That's nearly 100,000 residents per commissioner, which is practically like a congressional district, but you're supposed to be dealing with local constituent services and balancing a $3 billion budget. So this is way too much power for too few people, and it allows a bully to come in there and really, manipulate the entire dais through intimidation. Whereas if you had a larger body, 7, 9, 11, whatever's appropriate for a city our size, you dilute the power of each vote, and it becomes a little more democratic. And you have smaller districts, like Coconut Grove could have its own commissioner.
25 years ago, maybe farther back than that, the Dade County Commission grew. The school board grew. That was Steve Cody represented. I'm not sure he represented, but he won that lawsuit. The school board at that point said, all right, what do we need to do? Is there a legal case for making it more commissioners in the city of Miami?
So there's a legal process that's very easy through voter referendum, and it would just amend our charter. It'd be easy. I don't think we need to change to strong mayor system and some of these other charter changes. I like our system. I think it can function well if good people are in office. But of course, the President of the United States can always come in and commandeer our police force at any time, apparently. So
I think I heard something about it in Washington, D.C. the other day.
Happening right now. Happening right now.
But it couldn't happen here.
It technically could not happen here because D.C. is it's a product of the federal government, right? It's our capital. It doesn't have a state overseeing. We have a state. We have a local home rule charter under the state. So technically, the governor could come in and do what Trump is doing in D.C., but the president could not.
Let's talk about recycling. It seems like 6 months ago or a year ago, I was reading in the Miami Herald, City of Miami is considering getting rid of the recycling program. Why was that even suggested, and what's going on with it?
It's just giving up. Recycling is complicated, but if you hire the right vendors, the right people that specialize in this, it can be profitable for them and positive for the environment. And cities don't have to lose money. It used to be a profit center because people would sell their recyclables to China. They'd ship it all the way to China, which isn't very environmental either, if you can think of the footprint of that. So dealing with our recycling locally and then creating a composting program means we would no longer even need a garbage incinerator. Imagine that we're still burning garbage like from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. That's what we're still doing in Miami-Dade County. If I have my way as mayor, day one resolution, the city of Miami will no longer send any of our garbage to an incinerator, and we will create a robust composting and recycling program.
As I mentioned before, my wife and I went out and got a composter for the house. Very quiet. You can buy it on all different ranges. It's about 3 feet tall, about this wide. Flip the top open. You put all the food in there, and in 24 hours, it essentially is turned to dirt. It's just incredible, and how quiet it does not smell at all. I don't know the process, whatever it's doing, burning it, dehydrating it. And so I wonder if there's a place for that, and in what extent. And when we look at Miami-Dade County lost its waste to energy plant in 2023, and it was kicked around for a couple of years. Now there's 6 cities for sure that it can't get into. So the county is now considering other locations for this waste to energy, and I know you're an opponent of that. What do you think is going to happen with that?
Well, it looks like the will is there to continue burning trash politically, but there's no will to put it anywhere. So they're trying to have their cake and eat it too. They're trying to keep the incinerator companies who fund their campaigns happy and keep promising to build an incinerator, but they know their constituents don't want it. And there's no environmental group you'll find in the country that wants us to burn garbage. It creates CO2 in an unmitigated way that adds to climate change, and it's bad.
So right now the county's taking whatever trash doesn't go to Mount Trashmore. Forgive me, I don't know the other name. And we're paying a company $500 million a year to take our trash and bury it into the ground, all of it. Up there.
Also a bad solution.
Yeah, I think it is atrocious what we're doing. And the older I get, I'm going, that's terrible. Right.
So the false choice is that we have this binary burn it or bury it argument, and both are bad for the environment and all sorts of things. But there's a third solution, and I've studied different cities around the country that are already doing this, where they divert all the recyclables, all the organics out, and then we always have a landfill. There's always, even if you burn trash, the ash goes in a landfill. So what goes to the landfill, if you divert everything, is a cleaner, smaller landfill that doesn't have the organics breaking down and even the smells or the methane. And then you have a separate composting facility, what you do at home, but on an industrial scale, that really provides rich nutrient earth for all sorts of things, but also gets rid of organics without harming the environment.
Well, I hope that next year, the next fiscal year, the Miami-Dade County, not city Miami-Dade County, puts some money into public relations and marketing so people will start thinking about recycling properly, because we know, depending on what trigger you want to believe, 30 to 70% of the stuff that you put in the blue can does not get recycled. Right, because it's a term I've heard. It's contaminated.
It's a lack of education of the consumer who provides that recycling, and they mix, they contaminate, as you said.
And the county has you can put a pizza box in as long as it's just lightly soiled. I'm thinking, why don't you just say no pizza box?
They've switched to that at this point, because they realize people are testing grease content. It's not going to happen. So
listen, if there's not a lot of grease in it, people don't want to eat it. Okay, let's talk about the septic tanks, the worst ones in the city of Miami. All right, I think a lot of them are in the city of Miami. What are we going to do to try to fix that?
So interestingly, in the city of Miami, the septic tanks that remain that are at risk at water level, it's under 200 septic tanks altogether. We do want to get away from septic and go on to sewer, and this is a county issue of the way the infrastructure works, but the city can help because it's our residents and our constituents' properties who aren't hooked up to that sewer. So if the county is willing to bring the infrastructure in, the main pipes that come down the roads, the city could absolutely participate in helping our residents hook up, because it can get costly.
Yeah, and essentially extend it into the city.
Yes, and on major arteries, it already is, but there's a lot of neighborhoods who aren't hooked up yet.
Okay, so here we are. The election is, let's see, pretty soon.
Nobody knows. It's November 4th, actually, and absentee ballots go out about a month before that. So first week of October, people will already be voting on this race.
Which is around the corner.
Yeah.
So my suggestion to people, if you do it by absentee ballot, the day you get it, fill it out and send it off, all right? And if people are like paranoid somebody's going to steal it, they can take it over to where would they take that?
Well, also, if you haven't received your absentee ballot by the first week of October, it may not be coming, because you'll remember the state has started purging the rolls every year, and you need to re-register, and people can get missed, and there's all sorts of problems with the mail. So whether you didn't get your ballot or you want to vote in person anyway, you can take your ballot with you to your local polling place, whether it's early voting or on the day.
And there's a way, if you mail it in and you keep copy of it, you can keep track of whether it was received.
Absolutely.
So if somebody calls and it's not been received, and they go, it's been 2 weeks, what can they do?
You check on it. So you can Google the Division of Elections or the Department of Elections at your local county clerk's office, and they will take care of, they have a full, you put in your address, your birthday, they'll find you and they find the status of your ballot.
So let's say it got lost, all right? And the people say, no, I mailed it, but it's gone.
Yeah.
They could then still go and vote.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
As long as it's not, as long as there's not one that's here.
Yes, because they'll have on record that your vote hasn't been received.
Okay. So we have, let's talk about cleaning Biscayne Bay, keeping it clean.
Mm-hmm.
What can the city do?
So I passed an ordinance when I was in office called the Environmental Crimes Ordinance. It was the first of its kind in the state, because normally when construction sites silt out into the bay, you see those big plumes of cloudy water going out. They're ruining corals and seagrasses. So I created an ordinance that criminalized that and would actually shut down construction sites until they sorted it out and fixed it. Before, it was just a $200 a day fine. Nobody's stopping $1 billion project for that. But that has actually changed their behavior, because time is money. And this was done in conjunction with the building industry. They want to be good partners. They want a healthy bay as well. And it's really, you don't see those silt plumes anymore like you did 2-3 years ago.
When COVID was here, we took a look at the bay. It was really close. It was blue, and they compared it before, during, and then after.
Yeah.
And it was sort of like the sky was like beautiful, like off the islands. And then all of a sudden we are using the water like we use the air, like we use the street. And so there's certain things that happen when we use the water for boats, etc. What is it that somebody can do if they live by the water so they can try to keep it a little bit cleaner? So
surprisingly, the majority is not coming from boats. The majority of the pollution in that water is coming from runoff in our streets. And so what wasn't happening during COVID was cars in our streets with all the grease and oil and everything that settles on the asphalt. And then the first time it rains, all those drains go to the bay. And so that's why we saw such clean water in the bay. But because
there were less people driving.
Yes. If you live near the water, I actually passed an ordinance on this that everyone should know about. It's a fertilizer ban during certain rainy months. That high rainy hurricane and summer season, you're not supposed to put fertilizer on your lawn, and you're never supposed to put it within 15 feet of the bay, because that does just flow right off into the bay. And those fertilizers are nutrients, those herbicides are killers. None of that's good for our waterways.
Let's talk about the police force, the protection that people want, satisfaction of the people, and what the mayor can do to improve that.
Yeah, I've always been in favor of a healthy, strong police force that does its job. And we have that. I'm very proud of the City of Miami Police Force. They've come a long way from when they were under a Department of Justice consent decree.
How long was that?
For bad behavior. And that was, the sunset of that was right as I was coming into office, and I helped create a task force that got them out from under that consent decree by changing their habits of how they police within the community. And I'm very proud of them and the way they act. There's no federal body that could say that we're some city that's run down and crime-ridden. Our crime rate is actually lower than it's been in the past. Things still happen, and we can always improve. But the fact that our police is proactive and cares about our community is something that we can be proud of.
When you think about the job and the life that a lot of policemen have, which is, you like the police if they're going to help you, and if they're going to give you a ticket, you got a problem. Versus the firemen, everybody loves the firemen, right? It's like, you're not, they're going to save you.
They have calendars, the whole thing. Yeah.
And so what is it, when you think about the stress that the policemen are under, and so often we think because they're big and burly and they're macho and they sit around and if you were going to paint them and say big testosterone muscle guys, but the reality is when you're a policeman and every second or third car has got a weapon in it, right? That certainly has to play havoc until you straighten your head out. What services are available to help keep the policeman centered?
So they do have all sorts of health and mental services within the departments that help officers deal with stress, and it is a stressful job. It's one of those thankless jobs, right? You definitely can see a tough time in there. But one of the things that I did to help support police was actually make sure that we held any officers that were not acting as they should accountable, because good officers really don't want bad officers in the force. And it happens just like in any job. You have folks who are great at their job, and you have folks that are not so great at their job. And so we created an accountability process back when I was in office. That's now been undone and removed, but it really helped foster a healthy place where good cops were appreciated for good work. And it didn't make him feel like they were getting lumped in with any bad apples or being painted with a broad brush.
Is it possible to save what's left of the West Grove, and what does that look like?
Thank you for bringing that up. Little Bahamas of Coconut Grove, a resolution which I passed to rename it, was very purposefully done to show everyone that it is very worthy of saving from a cultural preservation perspective and a community perspective of actual people that live there. It's one of the very first massive accumulation of Black-owned homes in the state of Florida, because back in the 1800s, when the labor force was there, they would often get paid in land versus money. And so you've got generational family wealth of home ownership there that's getting pushed and squeezed out through displacement and gentrification. There's a way to have positive progress in Coconut Grove without displacing a community that's there, that's very special. There's over a dozen local churches in West Grove that people still go to every Sunday, even if they can't live in the community. They come there and celebrate. We brought the Goombay Festival back. We've saved the last remaining shotgun homes that show the Bahamian culture. It's so worth investing in and saving.
So I have a family member that owns a house near the Playhouse.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm there all the time, and then you see these very, very nice recent homes, and next to it is this old Bahamian home. And when you see it, there's this peacefulness that comes over you, and it connects us to the past. And the new ones, they're beautiful, but unfortunately, so often it's at the expense of those homes. So I hope that you're able to figure out something, to do there. The Miami-Dade County Commission was some of the commissioners that were considering clawing back the $25 million, I think, that they wanted to give to FIFA. And the conversation was, well, if we're giving it to them, our charities are losing out. What was explained to me, which was, that's an investment, and we're going to get back hundreds of millions of dollars of people coming here and going to the hotels and going to the restaurants and buying our stuff. I don't have any thoughts about that.
Bottom line, they have a $400 million shortfall. And when you have a nearly $500 million shortfall, you're going to have to make some hard decisions. And things that you would otherwise love to invest in, you may have to change your mind on those things. You may have to claw them back. In the city of Miami, we always had a balanced budget by law. We could not submit a deficient budget. And we were very proud of that. So I know the mayor's working hard. She's under a lot of new stresses with all of these departments that are not under her control, that have a massive budgetary impact. But yeah, a lot of things are going to have to suffer, and all of them could make an argument for why they shouldn't be cut. But at the end of the day, they've got to balance that budget.
Yes. So for people that don't know, the mayor makes this suggestion, then the commission, the 13, that make a decision whether they approve it.
Correct. Right?
So the mayor presents it, all right, with staff, and then the commission. So if you got a problem, find your local commissioner, all right?
Absolutely.
All right, that's where to point it. You can point it to the mayor, but the reality is the other people are also in charge of that. So what else do we have to talk about here today?
Really, the greatest crisis in all of the city of Miami is affordable housing and government corruption. Those two things need to be solved for us to move forward and be the city that everyone thinks we are from far away. Only once they get here do they realize some of the problems we have, and the cost of living is just too high compared to the salaries that we have. So the government has a responsibility to play a role and incentivize development to build a product we need. But as long as we have government corruption playing games, nothing gets done to that level, because everyone has to cooperate and work under the right format to get those incentives in place. So we're at a stalemate right now, and we need to move on from the past in the city of Miami and let new leadership work on those sorts of solutions.
We frequently hear affordable, and people think it was affordable to them, but that's a legal term. Mm-hmm. And so we know that there's, for the average person in Miami-Dade County, it's really expensive, and then at some point that's probably going to cause a little bit more homelessness as we start to see that. But when I was downtown the other day, building after building after building is under construction, is massive. It's just unbelievable, right? Peter Zolitsky said it will be 2032 before it evens out. Any thoughts about that?
So the big question is, how many of those new buildings are going to service the community that lives here now that is trying to afford to stay here, or is it all for the market rate luxury that's on its way in from markets that are more affluent than even here? And if we're not balancing that, because that increases our overall tax base, good thing, but if we're not using that tax base to serve our residents that are here, bad thing. So like I say, you can create new policies that ensure that the new towers that are coming up are creating the product that we need for our community in addition to the regular market rate. We're not trying to stop market rate growth. We're just trying to make sure, and this is the government's responsibility, that someone doesn't have to commute 2 hours to work in the city of Miami, that they can afford to live within a normal radius.
I'm glad you brought that up. Let's talk about traffic and mobility. What if you live downtown and you're moving there?
Yeah.
There's a reason you are there. You're not going to be working out in the suburbs, I don't think. So what attracts people to move smack in the middle of downtown or Brickell, whatever area downtown?
Well, you'd be surprised. There's a great percentage of people working downtown who cannot afford to live downtown. Everyone who services those buildings, a lot of the folks who work in those restaurants and stores, they're not affording an apartment downtown unless the types of inclusionary zoning take place and the product is built that services all of us, which it should be. I'm a really big believer in not compartmentalizing poverty and really building an inclusionary community that serves everybody and is profitable for all. So it's very possible, but it's not happening yet.
I understand a $30 million grant from the federal government was withdrawn the other day. There was going to be a park underneath the...
60.
What, I'm sorry, how much?
60 million.
60 million.
This was a park that I started, actually. It's now grown into something way beyond me, and I don't take credit for it, but the very first park was called Omni Park, and it was in the exact same spot, and we built it when I was the chairman of the CRA over there to show that a blighted empty space next to a highway was the perfect place for a green space that would connect a community of Overtown with the water.
And that was part of the selling point of this whole thing. Hey, neighbors, we're going to have this place for you to go.
They're accepting the giant arches and the billion-dollar bridge that doesn't cross water and didn't need the arches because they were going to get a nearly 40-acre world-class park. I mean, world-class park underneath. And so that grant came in and from the federal government under the Department of Transportation and Pete Buttigieg as sort of a reparation. And this is where it becomes right versus left, red versus blue, because they don't like words like equity or reparation. Overtown was decimated when I-95 was built. And by giving Overtown a 38-acre park that connects to the museums and the water, that doesn't solve what happened back then. But it's the very least we can do as a government to produce world-class parks for all of our communities and not play favorites just for the wealthy communities. That's what equity is truly about.
Okay, so let's now, on a more positive note, let's talk about the underline.
Sure.
It looks like it's moving along pretty rapidly.
It is. They should be ready to ribbon cut their final section next year, and they're moving very well. So it's a very similar linear park to the one that got defunded by the federal government. And they're cobbling it together as well as they can, and incredibly so, through local, state, and federal government, as well as private industry and philanthropy as well.
My father used to be a runner, and he would run underneath the Metrorail. I said, "Are you crazy? You're going to get stabbed and killed." Him. So now here it is, advanced a couple decades, and it's party time. This is a linear park.
Who would have thought?
Right.
When I got into office, I really thought nobody's going to want to have a picnic next to US 1, right? But they're proving it. And it's going to be one of the most used green spaces we have in the city of Miami, especially for those who love to jog and bike.
So one of the things that if we look at what's happening around the country, where cities have gone ahead and said, yes, restaurants, you can use the sidewalks, and yes, we're going to make it easy on you, so you don't have to get more bathrooms. And here in South Miami, it was the Deli Lane and Sunset Tavern. They have, I don't know how many seats are out front, and that's the gathering place when it's not summer and people are there, right? And they are part of it, right next to the cars.
Yes,
right.
It's true.
And everybody's going, it's okay.
Think of the greatest cities, Paris. The sidewalk cafe was invented there, right? And so, yeah. Okay. So maybe more electric cars, and that'll make it even better.
Okay. Candidate for mayor, Kenny Russell. Thank you so much for being here.
Appreciate the time.
Appreciate your energy. We're going to look right over here. Folks, listen, thanks for joining.